Hey there guys, welcome back. It's Ricky here. Okay, so I had a question about two knives, and particularly this Masamoto's. We have the Masamoto KS and the Masamoto VG. So I had an email of a subscriber asking me what are the differences, or what are the key differences between the two Masamoto's. And these two knives are my favorite knives. It just happens to be that Masamoto makes makes the two favorite knives I like to use every single day. And so I'll talk about some of the key differences. So other than the the obvious handle, the Japanese handle, wall handle, and the Western style handle, we're gonna really talk about the blade and how the knife actually feels on a day-to-day basis. Okay. So first off, this is the KS here. In my opinion, this is the best knife you can buy. I mean, if you're regardless of any dollar amount you're spending, this is the best knife. Okay. So this is a knife that a lot of high-end knife manufacturers replicate their knives from, and I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but if you do your research on a lot of forums, I can name 5 or 6 major brands out there that will say specifically designed after the KS in their marketing or in their advertising section or in their description areas. And that just tells you how well made this knife is. And so this is a carbon steel knife. Okay, so we're going to talk about the key differences between the two knives. And so the KS is a carbon steel knife. It's made by Hitachi White No. 2, which is it's a very, very sharp steel. Okay, it's a steel that most high-end manufacturers will make their knives from. Okay, the VG line uses well, no one really quite knows what steel it is. Some people suspect that it's the VG10, and others will say VG5. Okay, so regardless of that, it's a stainless steel, and even regardless of whether it's a VG10 or VG5, it's a very, very good blade. It's a very, very good knife. America's Test Kitchen rated the VG, and they call it, I think, the VG10 in that video, but they call the VG their favorite hybrid Japanese gyuto. Okay, and that says a lot for it went against knives from like the $75 range all the way up to like $300-400, and this was their knife of choice, other than the Victorinox 8-inch chef knife. Okay, so right off the bat, you can notice the profiles are very, very different between the two knives. Okay, so the KS is, in my opinion, made more for fine cutting and fine usage, and it's a much more dexterous knife. So if you're the type of person that likes to do a lot of fine cutting, chopping, and you're doing a lot of variety of cooking, you may like the KS more. Also, for me, I'm more of a chopper and a slicer instead of a rocker. Okay, if you're coming from if you're used to using Wusthoffs and Wenkels, a lot of your cutting is going to be this rocking motion. Okay, and in the KS it can rock as well. It's just not ideal for rocking. It's got a nice semi-flat spot towards the base of the knife, and it's got a really slight belly, a really, really slight curve. Okay, so it's got a very different profile than what you normally see on a European knife. Okay, so this knife for me, chopping is really, really great for that. The profile is really great for that, and because it's a very pointed, sharp, and tapered tip, the slicing action is really good in this knife. Okay, and this is a MDF board, so it's actually really good to cut on. It doesn't harm your knife at all, so don't worry. So that's the in terms of cutting differences between the two knives. Okay, on the VG, like again, it's a much more rock-friendly blade. Okay, you can see this. It's got a bigger belly or rounder belly, and it's got a slight, ever so slightly flat spot towards the back here. So yeah, it's really good for rocking, and it can chop as well. The one thing I've noticed using these two knives, especially on the VG in terms of chopping, is the weight of the blade, the weight of the knife, it's actually pretty well balanced between the two. But you have to realize that the blade, this is a 240 millimeter Gyuto, and even with the hefty, blade here, it's got a very, very heavy handle. Okay, so if you're coming from a European knife, you may like the VG better because it does have that more Western feel to it. Okay, it's got a very heavy, or relatively very heavy handle, and so for those who are used to using European knives, my wife particularly loves the VG more because it feels more like what she's used to. Okay, on the KS, it's got an extremely light handle. This is a whole wood, which is like very, 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 very light. And the weight of the blade, it's actually, the balance of the blade is really far forward, okay? It's actually about a half an inch to an inch, about a half an inch farther forward than where my pinch grip is. Yeah, about a half an inch, close, maybe a quarter of an inch, okay? A lot of people say you want I've been reading a lot and seeing a lot of people say they want the weight of the handle, the balance, right where the tang meets the handle. I don't agree with that. I actually prefer the weight of the balance of my blade slightly more forward, because when I have the weight forward and I'm chopping, you actually want a slightly heavier tip because it aids in your chopping, makes it a little easier to chop. If the weight's too far back, or perfectly centered, as some people would say, the weight is, the weight of the blade is too far back this way, and it makes chopping a little bit, I wouldn't say difficult, but it just makes it less pleasant than if you were to have a knife with the weight farther forward. It definitely feels easier to chop with. Okay, so that's that. In terms of retaining its sharpness and sharpening, so the KS tapers to a finer blade tip. Okay, so the edge of the cutting edge of the KS, it's finer than the VG. Okay, and in the hands of a good sharpener, the KS will be sharper than the VG line. Okay, but most people who buy the VG, I think this knife is geared more towards people who are going to be cooking at home, who are not going to be sharpening their knives every single week or every single day. So, in that respect, the VG is a little better because it is a heftier blade. It does hold a really nice edge. It doesn't get quite as sharp, but it can hold the edge pretty long. Okay, I can't say if it's longer than the KS line, but it holds the edge very, very well. Okay, so in terms of sharpening, I think this knife is the white steel, white number 2, is easier to sharpen than stainless steel. That's kind of, I will say that's universally true amongst any manufacturer. You will see that carbon steel knives are easier to sharpen than stainless steel knives. Okay, and if you guys want to argue that, that's fine. Just write me a comment. Let me know what you think. So that's so in terms of sharpening and edge retention, I would say sharpening is easier on the KS. Retention-wise, it depends on how you're using it. If you're the type of guy that wants a razor sharp edge every single day, every single time you're using your knife, okay, you're gonna have to sharpen this knife a lot more often. Maybe once a week or something. When I was using the VG, or I do use the VG at home full time, I only sharpen it once every maybe 2 to 3 weeks. And this knife I sharpen about every once or twice a week, and that's just because this is the knife that I pride myself in, and so I tend to want this knife razor sharp. But for daily usage, the VG holds up just fine. Yeah. So, and again, now with the carbon, blade, you have to realize that it will patina and it will rust if you let water stay on it too long. Now, I keep my knives extremely clean. I have a couple different methods I use to keep my carbon knives clean. I don't like patinas particularly. I know a lot of people love patinas. I don't like patinas. Some people force patinas with mustard, vinegar, lime juice. I don't. Okay, after my sharpening, every sharpening, I will either use 4-0 or 4-0 steel wool, or I will use a sodium bicarbonate powder that get from Arm & Hammer. I don't have it with me, but it's in the kitchen. I'll dump that onto the knife or onto a little dish plate with some water, and I'll just run it across the blade, and that actually gets rid of it pretty. It's a chemical reaction that gets rid of the patina. But the quickest, easiest way is just get ultra fine sandpaper if you want, or the 4-knot steel wool, and it rubs right off. Okay, and the VG, it's stainless steel. You never have to worry about that. I've never had any sort of rust issues with the VG line. But there you have it. Hopefully, hopefully that clears up the difference between the two knives. Oh, and price. Okay, so here's where it may really make a difference for you. The VG line will run between $160 to $190 between what length you guys get for your blade. The KS line, it's a 240 millimeter. It starts at retail price of $330, so $320, right around there. Okay, so that's something to consider. Okay, so this knife, it really is a niche knife. It's not for everybody. It's not for the everyday home cook or just knife lover. Well, knife lover, yes, this is gonna be for everyone. But yeah, the VG line's geared more for home use. Professional knives, professional chefs use them too, but but they're designed more for that crowd. But the KS line is definitely a specialty knife. This is the knife for those who see a knife as art. Okay, so if you're that type, and also I feel like the KS line will actually grow with me as my skills get better as a cook. Okay, I'm not a chef. Okay, I'm just a home cook. Okay, I love cooking. I cook every single day if I can, or I eat leftovers if I don't have time. But I feel like the KS will grow with me until the day I die. I think the VG, I think after even using it, after about 6 months of using the VG line, I still enjoy the KS a lot more, and I use the KS at every opportunity that I can. Okay, and the VG, if I'm just cutting an apple or a broccoli, I'll use a VG line. But if I'm doing any sort of cooking where I have to prep my food before cooking it, this is the go-to knife that I use. Okay, but other than personal preferences and preferences of weight, of balance, you'll be happy with both knives. Okay, either one of them will work for you, and that's the thing, is a good chef can use any knife, can use a $50 knife and cook with it, and as long as you keep it sharp, it's a knife. Okay, so for me, I really enjoy my knives, and they're things that I really walk into the kitchen, and sometimes I just pick up my knife just to look at them. I know it sounds kind of weird for you guys out there who are watching this, but you guys will understand. For those of you guys who love knives, you love experimenting, you love sharpening, you love the pleasure of owning a good knife. So anyways, I don't know if this video clears anything up for you, but hopefully it does. Thank you guys for watching, and see you in the next video.